Welcome to XYPN Radio, where your host Alan Moore brings you into a community of fee-only financial planners who want to profitably and successfully serve Gen X and Gen Y clients. If you're ready to get the knowledge you need from leaders in your field, learn from forward-thinking advisors, and take action on your own goals, XYPN Radio is the show for you. Here's your host.
Hello and welcome to this episode of XYPN Radio. I am your host, Alan Moore, and today's episode is a really exciting interview with Matt Becker, the founder of momanddadmoney.com. Matt is honestly the best writer I know in financial planning and one of the best brand builders. He's just built this awesome brand around mom and dad money, and he's built an entire firm primarily focused on the very obvious target market, new parents. So Matt started his firm with zero experience. He had literally never worked with a client a day in his life before he launched his firm. And Matt shows that it is indeed possible to do so. Now, I know a lot of listeners will email and they'll call me to ask, is it really possible to launch a firm with no experience? And Matt is a great showcase that yes, it's possible. However, he does give some words of caution or wisdom, shall we say, to those looking to do the same. So if you're thinking about starting a financial planning firm, but you don't have any financial planning experience and you're just not finding the right job opportunities, I think this episode is going to give you a really great look into what it means and just what that process looks like. Matt also gives us a really awesome inside look into kind of his upcoming plans to create some additional service models between free content, using a blog, and his kind of full-blown financial planning service that's going to allow him to reach a lot more clients, which I think is perfect given his target market, because as he notes, sometimes new parents aren't ready to sign up for comprehensive financial planning. You can check out all the resources that we mentioned, and we definitely go through quite a few at xyplannetwork.com/13. Now, this month's episodes are brought to you by New Planner Recruiting, which is the leading recruiting firm integrating new financial planners into unique and exciting growth opportunities with firms nationwide. You can check them out at newplannerrecruiting.com, and you can also go listen to our interview with their co-founder, Caleb Brown, at xyplannetwork.com/9. So without any further ado, here is my interview with Matt Becker of Mom and Dad Money. Hey, Matt Becker, welcome to the show, man.
Hey, Alan. Thanks for having me on.
Yeah, I'm really excited to have you on because you have such a cool story and a really interesting brand, and you're working on so much cool stuff. So thank you so much for taking the time. So for anybody that doesn't know, Matt Becker is the founder of Mom and Dad Money, which guess what his niche is? It's a very obvious niche market. I love it. So let's just kind of get started. Tell us a little bit about, I guess, kind of your career path. How did you get into financial planning?
Yeah, it's funny because it's this kind of long, twisted, disconnected path that I honestly don't even remember all of the specific details of how each piece fell in place. But basically, I went to college and had no idea what I wanted to do with my life, I think like a lot of people. I was a psych major. Towards the end of my time there, I got interested in kind of business and finance and ended up kind of minoring in that stuff and took a couple finance courses at the end that were really interesting to me. And I guess that kind of served as a starting point. But after school, I jumped right into a startup software company, which sounds way sexier and more exciting than it actually is. It was really tiny. It was me and two other people for a while, very quiet and kind of isolated. But I was there for 6.5 years after school. I liked the work. I liked what I was doing, liked the people. Never really felt like it was what I wanted to do long term. And, my kind of early interest in finance coincided with, going out and, living on my own for the first time, away from, out of school, away from my parents, in an apartment, and realizing that if I was going to be able to go out and have fun with my friends and still have money to eat, I was going to need to have some kind of system in place to manage my money. So that really is how I started learning personally, and I just kind of kept learning and I really loved it. And eventually friends started coming to me for advice about investing, and that was really fun to work with people. I found some volunteer opportunities in Boston that I could kind of work with low-income residents and help them. And I don't even remember how it happened, but at some point I realized, I learned that financial planning was a career that you could pursue. I actually think it was my mother-in-law's financial planner who was the person who introduced me to this, and I was really lucky that he introduced me to the world of fee only. I feel incredibly fortunate that was my kind of first introduction, and I just loved the idea of it. So while I was working this other job at this software company, I enrolled in online courses for the CFP education, did that for about a year and a half, then studied and took the CFP exam. This was all 2010, 2011. And then we had a baby. My wife and I had our first son, and life just kind of stood still for a while.
Always throws a little bit of a wrench in, a good wrench, but a wrench nonetheless.
Yeah, it was, it was great, but, we weren't sleeping, and, that was our focus of everything. And so, financial planning was still in my mind. It was still something I knew I wanted to pursue, but I wasn't doing anything with it for a while. And then about, maybe when our son was about 9 months old or something, I had always wanted to start a blog. That was just kind of an ego thing. I just wanted to write and have people know who I was. I thought that was a cool idea. And I'd always been, with this financial planning idea, I'd always wanted to find a way to use it to help people who were kind of in my situation, whatever that situation was at the time. And, now that our son was sleeping a little bit more, I had a little bit more brain activity available. I just kind of decided to start a blog, and I decided to start a personal finance blog geared towards new parents. And so I started momanddadmoney.com before I had my practice, while I was still at this old job, and just started writing and learning that world, learning the blogging world, learning kind of the online space, learning how to write and connect with people and try to get them to sign up for an email list and all that stuff. And I was doing that for about a year when the startup company I was working for started to fail, basically. That's what happens with startup companies. Sometimes they don't work. And so it was kind of a relatively slow wind down, but eventually it got to the point where the only way that our founder could kind of preserve some of the intellectual property, keep the company at least like barely alive, and try to do something with that was to get rid of the employees. And that included me. And so that was November of 2013 when I was out of a job. And that was pretty scary. I had never really been out of a job before. We had November, that was my oldest son was about 20 months old. We were about a month away from having our second son. So it was a little bit of a scary, stressful time, but that was really my opportunity to jump into financial planning. And it really came down to this big decision of, did I want to try to go find a job somewhere, some fee-only firm where I could kind of learn the ropes and work my way up, or did I want to start my own practice, which I knew I'd eventually want to do at some point, but I had never really thought of as a realistic opportunity. What gave me the motivation to do that was a couple things. One, I had the blog, which I had some traction there, and that felt good. And two, very honestly, I saw people like you, Alan, and I saw Sophia and Mary Beth, people who were doing this and were doing this in a way that was like mind-blowing to me with the whole like subscription model and all of that. And so I called you, Alan, I called Sophia, I called a few other people, and eventually, made the terrifying but exciting decision to just make the leap and turn momanddadmoney.com into, from this personal finance blog into a financial planning practice.
That's so huge. It's so awesome. A couple of takeaways I want to be sure we highlight. One is, so it sounds like you started your firm without really ever having worked with clients.
Yes, correct.
So you had the blog, so you kind of had a following and a brand and that sort of thing, and you had the CFP. Had you completed all the CFP courses and taken the exam by that point?
Yeah, so I'd done all the coursework. I'd done, passed the exam, but I was not a CFP. I had no experience, so I hadn't met the experience requirement. I'm actually still working towards that, so I'm still not a CFP.
That takes brass balls. Let's just be clear. People think each story is so unique, and people think it's crazy that some of us started, after just a few years of experience. But to go out on your own with no experience is huge. But it's awesome that was what was right for your family. Talk a little bit about, because you were living in Boston at the time when you launched, or about this time, because you now live in Florida, correct?
Yeah, so that is another wrinkle. So First of all, in terms of, having the courage, I mean, I am proud of making the leap. I do think it took courage. I think that really the push was, and I've written about this in some places before, but and this is, I think, a really good lesson for clients too, is, we had a huge emergency fund that we'd been saving, building up for a long time. And so we had a big runway. And I would not have done it without that because I had, a wife and 2 children who I needed to provide for. So that gave me a lot of confidence. And honestly, if it had just been up to me, I probably would have gone to try and find a job. That really actually is more my personality. And it was really my wife who pushed me to do it. And, we talked about it a million times. And at some point she just finally said, if we have all the savings, if it's not for this, then what's it for? And that,
oh, I love it.
Yeah, that really stuck with me. And I mean, I'm always going to remember that. And that was kind of the moment when it went from, cool, fun idea that I, in my head, probably wasn't thinking was going to be real to, oh my God, I actually am going to do this now, aren't I? This is terrifying, but awesome. And so I really have to give a lot of credit to her for pushing me to do that. And yeah.
It's probably one of the big things that can only emphasize over and over again. And that is that if you have a significant other, partner, spouse, long-term relationship, they've got to be on board and they've got to be supportive, because ultimately they will make or break your startup, because their support when things go bad is invaluable. And, them being there, if they're trying to drag you down and they're not a big fans of it, I don't think you'll be successful. So it's just a really good testament to your wife that, she wanted this for you and for her and for your family as much as you did. Maybe more so.
Yeah, no, absolutely. She's been super supportive the whole way. And that goes back to when I was, working, full time and doing the CFP coursework and exam, because I was basically just studying all of the time that I wasn't at work, and she was always supportive there. So yeah, I've been super lucky.
So did you launch the firm in Boston or did you launch the firm in Florida? What did that process look like?
So I lost a job in November 2013. And it took a few weeks of looking into options and thinking about what we wanted to do before I actually decided that I was going to start this practice. So that was in December. Because I wasn't a CFP, I had never taken the Series 65 before. I wasn't actually allowed to be an investment advisor or to register. So that was the first step. I needed to do that. That took some time to kind of study and get the Series 65 out of the way, get all the compliance stuff in place. I finally got registered in Massachusetts in about the middle of February. And then a couple of weeks later, my wife and I very abruptly decided to move to Florida. And this is where my wife's from. We live right outside Pensacola now. This is where she grew up. This is where her family is. It's something we'd been talking about for a long time. I think we decided to move on March 3rd, and we were down here in the house by April 1st.
Oh, man. That is fast. I love it.
Yeah, so it was quick, and that delayed a little bit. People always ask me when I launch, and I never really know what to say. Because technically I kind of launched in the middle of February, but then we moved, and that threw everything out of whack, and then I was doing the new website. So I always really feel like I launched kind of in May of 2014 down here in Florida.
Okay. So that was about 16 months ago.
Something like that, yeah.
So you launched in Florida. I'm assuming cost of living is much cheaper in Florida. You at least don't have state income tax, but I'm assuming it's a lot cheaper there than where you were previously. So you're able to bring down your household expenses a little bit.
Yeah, it is cheaper, especially rent is much cheaper. It's not quite as big of a difference as I was maybe hoping it would be, but it is cheaper, yeah.
So do you mind me asking, does your wife work?
Mm-hmm. She runs her own practice as well. So she's a mental health counselor. She runs her practice, Mended Wing Counseling, that specializes in working with people with eating disorders.
So you both have very specific niche markets. I love it. The niche family. So just to dig in a little bit on the income side of things, kind of where you were at when you were launching. So you had the emergency savings, so you had some runway, maybe reduce your living expenses at least a little bit in the short run, moving down to Florida. Your wife had some income. Did you find some ways to supplement income, any side hustles or anything like that?
Yeah. So when we moved down to Florida, we had basically no income because my wife was starting her practice again from scratch down here. I was starting my practice. So we basically had nothing. But soon after we got down here, I actually started doing contract work for my old company. And I was spending about half my day doing contract work for them and the other half of the day working on my practice. And that was incredibly helpful from an income perspective. And that lasted for several months. I don't remember exactly how long, and provided a good amount of income for us for a while we were both kind of building up our practices. Since then, I have done some freelance writing. That's kind of been my primary source of alternative income, besides the practice. So that's been helpful. And my wife has been honestly really successful building her practice and bringing in, for the most part, covering all of our living expenses at this point, which has been really helpful. So
that's awesome.
I did a couple things myself, and I have, again, support of the spouse there. She's been great too. Her practice has been really helpful.
Let's talk a little bit more about the writing, just because people ask all the time about side hustles, and we say, oh yeah, you can go write, but no one really knows the mechanics of that. So how do you find writing gigs? How do you price yourself? How do you determine if it's a good gig? Can you just talk us through just kind of what that side hustle looks like for you?
Sure. And I'll be totally honest that I am not the expert on this, and I've stumbled into a lot of the jobs that I've had. But the reason I've been able to get jobs is because I've been blogging, and I've been doing it for a little while. And so through that, I've connected with other people who are online and writing. I've also, kind of shown what I can do, shown that I can write pretty well, pretty clearly, and can, explain these financial topics in a way that's engaging and understandable and all of that. So that's really just doing it again and again and having, that proof of concept has really what has allowed me to get jobs. And then the other part of it is honestly just networking, because I actually haven't pursued a single freelance writing job. I could, and I could, certainly get more of them. They've come to me because I've made connections with people in the blogging space, in the freelance writing space, and job opportunities come up and they've reached out to me. So I've been lucky in that way, but it's been through my writing and then been through the connections I've made with people in the space. That's really where my jobs have come from.
And we'll talk more about what it means to have a niche, but I think this is a great example of when you have a really clearly defined target market, it's easy to interact with other people in your target market because you kind of all live in the same space.
Yeah, absolutely. And it also, now that you mentioned that, that's actually a reason that jobs have come to me, is because people are looking for someone who can write specifically about, financial topics as they pertain to young families. And so, again, that niche has really helped me there, and when people have been looking for someone for that specific purpose.
Yeah, and you can refer back to previous episodes of Michael and I kind of talking niche marketing. Niche comes up all the time, and I know we beat the table about it, but this is just a really great example of if you're the generalist that writes kind of general content, and you're up against Matt Becker, who writes content specifically for new parents. When somebody's looking for someone to write content for new parents, they're going to hire Matt. And then when they need content for airline pilots, they're still not coming to you. They're going to go to the person who works with airline pilots and writes for them. So, well, very cool. So I can give you one more. This is just you asked about how I determine pricing. Yeah.
And I still don't exactly know how to do that. But I will tell you that an opportunity came my way to write for a specific company through another blogger I knew. And I had no idea what to charge. And so I asked the other blogger what he had charged, what they had paid him, and it was way more than I was expecting, way more than I would have quoted. And that not only helped me in that job earn a lot more than I would have otherwise, but it's helped me when other opportunities have come up, use that as kind of my frame of reference for what I charge. And it's helped me make more for each of the other jobs. So, a couple lessons there. I just charge more than you're comfortable charging, and don't be afraid to ask other people. Some people won't share, but this person was, and it made a huge difference for me.
Yeah, and I'll add into that especially if you're a good writer, you're always going to get these opportunities, and the pitch sometimes will be, hey, it's like you're talking about hey, come in, write, and we'll pay you. But a lot of times it's, oh no, we have this amazing audience, so you should write for us for free, and then you can hopefully drive leads back. Are you doing any type of free writing just because it's great publicity, or are you only really doing paid writing at this point?
I have done some free writing, and I think that in the right situation, it can be great. But the right situation are usually not the ones that come to you. They're the ones that you seek out because the place you want to write is already in front of the people you want to reach out to. And you're going for the people, not for the pay. So I do think that can work. I think that if you really dive into this world, you're going to get a lot of what you're talking about, where people want you to write for free and talk about exposure. You're also going to get a lot of offers for really low paying jobs. And I've just decided that those aren't worth my time. But I think that a lot of times the exposure thing in particular is overblown. And I've actually been really surprised in a number of instances, sites that I thought were big got me very little anything from it, very little traffic back, nothing really came of it. So I'd be careful about the exposure thing unless you really know exactly why you're doing it and it's kind of something that you sought out.
That's good to know. I think that's awesome advice. And that is, if you need the exposure, it should be things that you're targeting, not people that are coming to you, because the people with your audience aren't necessarily coming to you saying, please write for us. It's going to be more you going out to, the Bump, is it bump.com? For new parents, like it's going to be going there and saying, hey, I want to write this article for you because you have the target audience. I don't know what all the best ones are for your space, but that's, I guess, the example I come off the top of my head that would be in how you would target, an audience that you really want to be in front of.
Sure. Yeah. And I mean, this online space is huge, and there are, so many sites and so many people, content marketing is a huge thing right now, right? So everyone wants more content. If you get out there even a little bit, you're going to get requests from people who want to put stuff on your blog or want you to contribute an article and get exposure from them and all of that. And, I think it's on you to be selective and proactive about what your plans are and what you want to get out of it.
And just to throw some numbers out there, I mean, everyone pays a little differently. It depends on word count and how technical versus, less technical and how much research and things like that. But I mean, I really see kind of the low end of reasonable being 200 an article, anywhere up to, I've seen people get paid as much as 500 an article. And if you're in a really tight niche, maybe you can get more than that. But does 200 to 500 seem like a reasonable range if people are kind of evaluating different offers?
Yes.
Okay.
Absolutely. Yeah. And especially, if you have the CFP, which I don't, but if you do have the CFP, I mean, that's a big selling point. That has some weight to it that you can kind of throw around a little bit, because they're not just getting any kind of freelance personal finance writer off the street. They're getting an expert, a professional who can lend, that kind of perspective to things.
And the bigger your social media following, this is another thing I've seen, is that you can really promote hey, I'm going to push this out to my followers that, I'm writing for your blog. So I'm going to be pushing people to come read this, or whether it's a blog or a newspaper or whatever, I'm going to be pushing people to come read it. And that can be a huge selling feature as well, that, you're going to get eyeballs on whatever you're writing for them, because ultimately they need our content. They need our expertise to bring people to their website. So if you help, take people to their website, they're going to be happy.
Yeah. And I think that, even if you don't have a huge social media following, I mean, I think that helps a lot. But I think just the act of sharing it and, engaging with the content that you write instead of just sending it and forgetting it, that's looked upon favorably. And, that might be a good way to either kind of increase your pay for a specific job because you're kind of playing along, or, or work your way towards, improve that connection, which could lead to another job. So I think, having a big social media following or having a big email list is great. But even if you don't, I think that, acting like you do kind of and sharing it anyways and being proactive in that way can help.
I guess we could add not even necessarily big, but targeted, right?
Sure.
If I'm hiring you to write new parent content, I want someone who has 1,000 targeted people that are following them on Twitter or on the newsletter list, not somebody with 10,000 broad, non-targeted lists. So having a really well-honed list. So we keep kind of dancing around this concept of niche marketing. So talk about a little bit about kind of, obviously you developed, or it sounds like you developed the niche just because that was kind of the space that you were in, but what made you decide to go with kind of this mom and dad money concept instead of being Matt Becker, financial advisor?
Yeah, well, I mean, I started Mom and Dad Money, like I said, as a blog, and I started it that way because it's what I was going through. I was a new dad, and we had really, honestly, all the new stuff we had to figure out had been confusing and overwhelming to me, which I've thought all right, I have a pretty strong financial background compared to most people. If this is hard for me, I'm sure this feels impossible to a lot of people. And so that's why I started the blog. When I was starting my practice, this was a big decision, and it's something I really struggled with was, did I want to keep just kind of targeting new parents and have that niche, or did I want to be a little bit more general? I wasn't going to go for kind of the anyone and everyone, but maybe more general, kind of like more like Sophia, kind of like Gen Y planning, like a broader spectrum. And I paid attention to kind of online business stuff. There were a few guys like Pat Flynn that I'd followed, and they talked about the power of having a niche. And I believe that when we talked, that was something that you and I had discussed. And so it just felt like one of those things that I was in the middle of myself. And it just felt like I could talk about it really powerfully. I also really cared about it. It was just something that I felt really strongly. Like I felt like as you're starting your family, you should have the right to have a strong financial foundation. So I really believed in it. And I also knew that I could always change at some point. I was never locked into anything. So it was actually a difficult decision. And I kind of went back and forth for a little while about, did I want to stay this specific or did I want to go a little more general? And in the end, it just kind of felt like what would be right for me and what excited me when I thought about who I wanted to work with and who I wanted to help.
Are you happy with the decision that you made?
I am most of the time. So, I think that the concept of niche marketing is really strong. And I think we've talked about some of the ways it's helped me with freelance writing. It's also it's helped with, getting press. I've gotten people who reach out to me because they're writing a story on, the USDA report that came out about the cost of raising a child. And that got me on, CNN Money and stuff like that. So that's helped. I know for sure that when I've gotten a bunch of emails from people who have signed up for my email list and they say, they can't believe they found my site. It's written exactly for them and they love it. So there are a lot of great things about having a specific niche if you really care about it. And if your marketing and material and content, all of that really is tailored to them in a way that they can identify with and understand and relate to. I have had questions from time to time, and we've talked about this a little bit, but for the same reasons it's scary to pick a niche, which is basically you feel like you're limiting yourself in some way. You're limiting the people you can work with. When your business isn't growing quite as fast as maybe you hoped for, whether your hopes were realistic or not. I've had questions from time to time about whether I picked the right group of people to target. And so I do, in the end, I'm very happy with it. I'm excited about the direction it's going and the opportunities that are available. But there have definitely been moments that I've questioned it and kind of doubted whether I'm on the right track.
I really appreciate you saying that because I know Kitsis and I are both the, go niche market, really hone in. And it's good to hear the other side of that, which is that it's not all fun and games. Sometimes it can be a struggle, and even people with just such a sweet niche and an awesome brand and marketing around it can still struggle sometimes with that decision. And listeners can go back to, episode 11. So if you go to xyplannetwork.com/11, you'll hear a discussion between Michael and I on basically the value of niche marketing. And if you go to episode 12, actually, which was our first bonus episode, you can go hear actually a question that came from Matt in our VIP community around this, like, how do you know when to call it quits on your niche? And so you can go listen to our response there. And anyway, so yeah, I think it's really powerful advice. So how are things going? How is business in terms of just kind of clients and kind of the prospects moving forward and kind of where things are at for you? Because you've been in business just a couple months over a year now.
Yeah, it's good. So a couple of things. One, I would say that overall, and this is something whenever I talk to people, because I get calls from people who are looking to get into this business and all of that. And I always tell people that it is not a straight shot to the top, that there's a lot of work that goes into kind of building momentum, and it takes some time to build a client base. And that's definitely something I've experienced. When I look at it over kind of a year's plus worth of time, the numbers are okay. They're pretty good, but it feels slow, honestly. And the growth hasn't been quite as big as I maybe would have hoped for at the beginning. With all of that said, it is growing over time. And the number of prospect calls I'm getting every month is increasing. And the number of clients I'm signing on is increasing. And I think it's kind of just a matter of time. If you're connecting with people in the right way, and if you're, providing, explaining what you do and providing something of value, that it just kind of takes time, and every action you take builds on the last one. So I would say that I would never tell someone that this is a straight shot to the top, that you're going to be super rich and have all the clients you need right away. And it's been a struggle at times. I think that's kind of the entrepreneurs. That's just part of being an entrepreneur. It's really exciting, all the things you're doing and all the opportunities out there. And it's also terrifying. And sometimes you feel like a total failure. So there's a lot of ups and downs, and right now I feel like I'm in an upswing. So right
awesome.
now I feel pretty good, and things have been really good, I'd say, over the last month or so, especially. And so, you got to look at it over the long term that way. So.
Jude Boudreau with Upperline Financial, before I launched my firm, he told me, you'll experience the highest highs and the lowest lows, sometimes all in the same day. And that is entrepreneurship. I mean, I know we like to put a really nice face on it and say how awesome it is. And it is. I mean, the fact that, you get to work from home and I hear the kids in the background, and I love it. That's such an awesome thing, and so there are awesome pieces, but it's not easy. I mean, it is a bit of a grind. And to be honest, I mean, if you listen back to some of the talking that Michael and I did around niche marketing, a lot of the pieces that we say to start with, you didn't have the advantage of. I mean, you didn't have the advantage of having your CFPs here listed on XYPNetwork.com and NAPFA.org and some of these, I call them easy marketing resources because they require the CFP to be listed. You couldn't go to your previous financial planning boss and say, hey, send me all your young prospects. I mean, right. There were a lot of what for some folks are low-hanging fruit you didn't have the advantage of, and yet you've still been able to build a practice that you're proud of and that you're happy with. And of course, we all want to grow a little faster, but you're still in business, and that's something that a lot of people can't say.
Yeah, and I think you mentioned some of the things that could certainly help. Like I said, when I worked for 6.5 years at the startup software company where it was between 3 and 7 people the entire time. And it was fairly isolated. So I didn't have, and partially for that reason, partially because it's just not my personality to get out there and meet tons of people. I didn't have a huge, book of potential clients when I started, other than people who were kind of already familiar with my website. And so I didn't have that. I don't have the CFP. I still don't. I have no idea what effect that has on my practice, to be honest. Like you said, I'm not listed in some of those places, but, pretty much almost no one I've talked to, none of the prospects I've talked to have asked about that or have cared. And I think that that's an important lesson, because I think that what I do a pretty good job of is when someone comes to my site, one, it's easy to connect with me. They can sign up for my list, get a free giveaway that's really valuable right away, and they can build trust with me over time in a way that makes some of those designations maybe not irrelevant, but nowhere near as important as they would be if those other trust building things didn't exist.
Totally agree. I mean, if the difference is between hiring a specialist without the CFP or a generalist with the CFP, I would personally take the specialist because my situation.
Sure. Yeah. And that's been great. And it's been really encouraging. At the same time, I have no idea how many people just haven't reached out to me because I don't have the CFP. I have no idea what that is. And so that's something I'm excited to be able to
to test.
To test at some point and put up there on the website. But
I personally don't think most folks are coming to us, because of the CFP, especially younger clients. They just don't know. The CFP just doesn't have that much brand recognition among consumers. I think the advantage is being able to be listed on a few of the websites that do require it. But you do such an awesome job of kind of a lead nurture. So let's just talk through and kind of educate listeners on what some of this looks like. So someone finds your website, they hear about you, you're quoted in the media, they click to your website, and people can go to momanddadmoney.com to see, one, it is not a very boring website. It's very engaging. It's very focused. So you said something about kind of a free giveaway. What is that free giveaway? What are you really driving people to do when they get to your website?
Yeah. So, when I was starting my business and when I was working on creating my website, I took this amazing website design course that I would encourage everyone to take. It's this website, fizzle.co, and it's fantastic. But they really hammered home that you need to figure out what your main goal is. When someone comes to your website, what do you want them to do? And you need to gear everything around that. So for me, and I think for a lot of people who in XYPN, it's getting someone to sign up for the email list. So, I have this thing called the New Family Financial Roadmap that's an ebook. It's essentially created from a big collection of blog posts that I've written over time, grouped into topics, like budgeting, life insurance, investing, saving for college, kind of the big topics that new parents care about, and really kind of walks them through all the major decisions and gives them a lot of step-by-step guidance about how to put all those things in place. So when someone comes to my site, the first thing they see is a big button that says, there's this text that says, "Hi, I'm Matt, and here you are at Mom and Dad Money." And then it says, "Get the roadmap." And they can click the button, enter their name and email address, and now they're on my email list. And the first thing I do is send them the roadmap with some explanation of what it is. And then what happens from there is really, if anyone listening is familiar with Kristen Harrod, it's really following kind of the Kristen Harrod model of, give away this free resource, send some follow-up emails. So I have a few follow-up emails that kind of go, highlight some of the key points in the roadmap and give them some specific, action steps they can start taking. And then, at the end of that, there are a couple of emails that say, "Hey, if you still want some help, here's what I do. Here's how I help people. Click here to schedule a free call." So it's basically a way to connect with people and give them an easy, free way to get some immediate value and get some immediate advice about how they can start improving their financial situation, to build trust with you. And then, for some of those people, it's going to make sense that they're going to want to work with someone. And so you just give them the opportunity. And at that point, it doesn't really have to be a hard sell. It can just say, "Hey, we've built this trust over time. If you want some more help, here's how you can get it."
I love it. This is a different era of marketing than we've ever been in the past. People can find us without having any idea who we are, and they can watch. And people watch for a really long time. I mean, we experienced this at XY Planning Network, where I talk to folks, they go, "Yeah, I've literally been watching your stuff since last April, and I just decided, to call you 18 months later."
Sure.
And people will do this on your website as financial planners, and they'll sign up for that email list. They'll check out the roadmap. They'll kind of, watch that blog. They'll see your quote in the media, and then at some point they're ready. Not everyone is in that action step. So sometimes it takes a little while, but
Sure. That's not a small point. That's actually a huge point, and ties into, I think, what we were talking about before about, how long it takes for growth to start happening. Because, we do this all the time. I have tons of people that I follow online who I love, and I read their blog posts and listen to their podcasts, and, I've downloaded their free stuff, and I've never bought anything from them. And it's not because I don't believe in them or don't trust them. It's just because, it's a big step to buy something from someone, that takes a lot. And so the reason the email list is so effective is, what I just talked about, that sequence where, they sign up, they get a few emails, they get a pitch to work with me. It doesn't stop there. Then they start getting my blog posts, and they start getting my newsletters, and they start getting other updates I send out. And just like you said, at some point down the line, when they decide that, hey, maybe I want some financial planning, you're at the top of their mind. And if you've done a good job kind of providing value and being helpful to them and being trustworthy, they're going to call you. And I've had that happen actually a number of times recently. That's one of the things why I feel I say I'm in upswing now. But it's been people who've been on my list for a long time, and I've never heard from once. And then they schedule a call to talk to me, and they're just ready. And so it's definitely a long tail approach. And I guess I kind of had this expectation like, I'll set up this, email autoresponder, and all these people are going to want to sign up for prospect calls right away. And it doesn't work exactly like that. And so you do need to be patient and give it time and build that trust, over a long period of time.
It is a really good point that content marketing is a long play. And there are going to be the people that show up and they're ready to sign on, but there's a lot of people that are testing you out. They just want to see, they want to develop that trust. And then when they're ready, they'll call. So we talked a little bit before we actually started recording. It sounds like you have some plans to put some services in between the free content and the full-blown financial planning service. So what are you looking at doing over the next 6 to 12 months to kind of continue to nurture your list, essentially?
Yeah. So, this basic model that exists. So it's give away the freemium, send up some follow-up emails, pitch your financial planning services, hope that some people sign up, and then, continue the long tail marketing. It's great. It does work. I have several things that I've been thinking about that have been kind of, I feel like, are limitations, at least for me and my practice with it. One, I'm targeting new parents, a lot of whom are kind of in the middle of a huge budget crunch. And a lot of them just don't have the money to pay for financial planning, even when it is relatively affordable compared to the other options out there. Or they're just not at the point in their life where they can even kind of imagine taking on that kind of, relationship. And so that's one. And then two, a lot of people that come to my site and end up signing up for my list, I don't think are actually even familiar with financial planning, or at least not in the sense that it's relatable to them. They might think of, rich people getting investment advice or something like that, but it's not something that's even on their radar. So the problem with, I think, my current setup is that it's a really big jump to go from, hey, sign up for this free thing that's helpful but free, to, okay, now let's start talking about spending a big chunk of money for ongoing one-on-one comprehensive financial advice. That's a big leap for a lot of people.
It is.
So, yeah, and so what I'm working on is actually a way to do a couple things. One, give more people guidance and advice and kind of step-by-step help than I could ever work with one-on-one individually. So basically help more people. Two, make some money from that. So kind of increase both the amount of income I'm bringing in and also kind of the number of sources that it's coming from. And three, make it a little easier for someone to go from, hey, I'm signing up for this free resource to, hey, financial planning might be a thing I can actually take advantage of. So the way I'm trying to do all of that, there's a lot of background, is basically just to add some steps to the process. So when someone comes to my website, and I'm in the process of implementing all of this, so this isn't up yet, but when someone comes to my website, they're still going to sign up for a freemium. And it's going to be a guide that kind of walks them through, similar to now, all the biggest financial decisions that you have when you're starting a family, helps them put them into some kind of priority order, and walks through the basics of each one. And then they're going to get a few emails following that up. And then they're going to get offered a kind of do-it-yourself guide. So this will be an expanded version with really detailed kind of step-by-step do-it-yourself advice for the person who either isn't ready for financial planning services yet or really doesn't want that kind of guidance, really just wants to know how to do it themselves. And so that'll be a relatively low-cost product, probably like 30 to 50 or 60 bucks, somewhere in that range. And so hopefully some people sign up and buy that, and it's kind of a smaller step from free to, 30, 40 bucks. And then from there, those people will be pitched on, hey, let's have a one-time, maybe 45-minute session for 99 bucks, where if you've been working through this guide and you have some questions, you want to make sure you're on the right path, we'll hop on the phone, I'll answer any questions you have, as many of them as we can possibly fit in that period. And so that's a chance for someone to, again, get some kind of one-on-one guidance, get some feedback in a really affordable way. Also in a way that, for me, is time-boxed and is profitable, because I'm able to help these people, but I'm doing it in a way that, there isn't a kind of free 30-minute get-to-know-each-other session. We're just hopping on the phone for 45 minutes, and I'm getting paid for that. And then some of those people will eventually become ongoing clients. And so really, there's a couple things here. One, there's small steps. So you go from free to, maybe 30 bucks to 99 bucks to the ongoing financial planning cost. They're smaller increments than, 0 to 100, right? 0 to the ongoing. It also just allows me to help more people, because people can benefit from kind of the do-it-yourself service without ever being an ongoing client, without me ever having to really even know exactly who they are. More people can get that kind of help. And it allows me to some extent, stop trading time for money, which I'm excited about, because I love working with clients. It's so much fun, but there's only so much time in the day, and therefore only so many clients I could take on. So it allows me to kind of increase my revenue sources and have some way to kind of grow at least a part of the business and increase the revenue there without having to, trade my time to do that.
It makes perfect sense. And there's actually some good research out there showing that once a person buys something from you, no matter how inexpensive, they are more likely to buy from you again. And so, this is an example of using an incredibly valuable product. I mean, you're so underpricing what you're doing, and I get why you're doing it, but I mean, the numbers you're talking about are just so sick low
right,
for the amount of value you're going to be providing. And so people are going to sign up, they're going to pay that 30, 50 bucks, whatever that number is, and they're going to get so much value. And then they're going to be like, oh, now, I mean, in the back of their mind, they don't know they're thinking this, but they're actually more likely then to sign up for the next level of service and that kind of one-on-one plan. And I would actually encourage you to push that pricing up a little bit, because we're seeing folks selling those at $400 and $500 for an hour-long call, but just depends on your target market, of course. And then kind of moving into that full-blown financial planning. And I'm sure this is blowing some people's minds, because this is not the way financial planning has been done, right? We've just gone from 0 to 1% AUM with $1 million minimum with everybody. We've never had these in between. And, my favorite saying is, I'm out here in Montana, and we say you don't have to be faster than the bear. You just have to be faster than your hiking buddy. So always hike with your out of shape friends. But the truth is, marketing is the same way. You don't have to be the world's best marketer. You don't have to be able to, be the best at optimizing every single little piece. You just have to be better than your competition. And in financial planning, any of these pieces that we're talking about, it's really easy to win the marketing game.
Sure.
And all the way down to, things that typical financial advisors don't do. Most advisors post their website and then they never update it. And here you are talking about a year later doing a bit of an overhaul. You're probably doing some tests and things like that. Like you can test the language on your button, sign up for the roadmap versus register versus, whatever language you think might work. Like you can actually test and see which is getting more clicks, and 1% more clicks is huge whenever it comes to like the long-term value of your list. So these are just different pieces that you can be considering. So how did you learn all this? I mean, you mentioned fizzle.co, which is awesome. Where else are you getting education on these types of topics?
Yeah, that's a big one. That's the one I spend most time. I'm listening to their podcasts and going through their material.
And Fizzle's what, $30, $35 a month, something like that?
Yeah.
Super cheap.
You can sign up for free. I think you get a month for free or 5 weeks for free or something like that. And yeah, so really cheap, awesome community, awesome resource. And I mean, even if you just listen to their podcasts, they're great. I get so many ideas from them. Beyond them, I mean, I follow Smart Passive Income, Pat Flynn's site, a few others just kind of here and there. And it's really just, I don't know, it's just kind of bits and pieces. Some stuff I've gotten from Copy Blogger and, I don't know. Beyond Fizzle, which is really the go-to resource, it's just kind of bits and pieces here and there. One of the things that really excites me about like doing this kind of thing is that once you have that kind of system set up, then there are a lot of really cool things you can do to like get people into that system even more. So like one thing I've set up that will eventually start feeding to this system are free email courses. So basically, I've been blogging for a while, so I have a bunch of posts on budgeting. I can take a few of them, put them into an email autoresponder in a way that makes sense, create this free budgeting email course, put it on the site, have people sign up, send them the emails, and then at the end, pitch them on whatever. So eventually I'll pitch them on my do-it-yourself guide or whatever. So you could do that. You could do webinars. When you create a blog post that's kind of meatier and has a lot of stuff in it, you could create, like a PDF download for them that, kind of walks them through the outline of the major points, whatever. There are like an infinite number of ways that you can start kind of leveraging the system to get people into it in different ways and kind of, appeal to people at whatever point they are at and eventually, grow that client base.
I think with a really important point being, you don't have to do it all at once, right? Sure. You just have to lay the foundation for this kind of marketing strategy. And I'm really glad you mentioned some of those resources because I think those are all rock star resources, and pretty much all the stuff that we use in-house is, fizzle.co, Copy Blogger is awesome. There's another one called Digital Marketer. That's a really good platform, but you learn a lot of this is going to be outside the industry. Another recommendation would be come out to FinCon. By the time this airs, we will have just been to FinCon. But every September, FinCon is kind of the home of bloggers and writers that all talk about money. And so you want to talk about a group of rock star marketers because they have to earn all of their money online. They never get, in-person referrals. It's not their business. And so if you want to learn how to do a lot of this stuff, FinCon is an awesome place. And we did it this year and we'll be doing it next year. We do the XYPN Network conference in conjunction with FinCon because we just think the content's so awesome that we want folks coming to both conferences if possible. So as we're kind of wrapping up, I actually have one direct question for you, and then we'll ask you kind of the question that we ask all of our guests. The direct question is, you started a financial planning firm with literally no experience. Do you recommend that to other advisors? I mean, any words of advice, particularly for the folks that are out there saying, I don't want to work for somebody else. I'm a career changer. I'm a little older. What do you tell those folks?
Yeah, I would say two things. One, if you're going to do that, I think that I was very lucky on two fronts. One, we had a very long runway. Like I mentioned before, we had a lot of savings and I was able to earn some money on the side, along with that. So having a long runway is important, and or having a spouse who can pick up some or all of the financial slack while you're kind of building it up, because it is going to take time for you to get to the point where you can support your family. That's just the reality of it. So I would expect that and know that you need that going in, and probably more time if you don't have experience. And number two, I would just say that, if you have that in place and this is something that you really want to do, just know that it is possible, and look for whatever you can as kind of like a foundation for you. So for me, that was my website. I had the website. I knew that space at least a little bit. That was really helpful. That was kind of my launch pad. For you, maybe it's a network of friends or colleagues or something that you could use as like a pool of potential clients. So know that it is possible and do whatever you can to kind of look at what you already have in place and play to your strengths and use that foundation as the launch pad to help you kind of accelerate forward and basically make up for the fact that you maybe don't have as much experience as someone else.
I love it. Don't should on yourself. And this is the kind of stuff where people start going, oh, I should be blogging. I should be networking. I should be doing this. You need to be doing something, but you need to be doing what you're good at. And it's okay to not do stuff that you either don't enjoy. Like I can't work a room to save my life. Literally, you can drop me into a room full of 50 prospects that want to work with me, and I will walk out without a name of any of them. No business cards, no names, nothing. That is not my skill set. So I don't go to networking events because I suck at it. You're a great writer. So like use writing and use that as your platform. You don't have to go do something else just because people tell you should. And for the folks that are out there, if you're not a good writer, it's okay not to write. It's okay to use a different platform. I'll admit I'm also not a good writer. That's why we podcast, because this is more my preferred medium to talk to folks as opposed to trying to do it through writing. So.
Right. Yeah. And I mean, there's a lot of things out there in the, kind of online marketing space that you are quote unquote supposed to be doing. And there's a lot that I'm not doing. And just like you, I'm not good at working a room either. That's not my thing. I do no local marketing. And, if I probably could get clients that way. It's not that it's a good idea to ignore it, but I think it is important to kind of to know what you're good at and not necessarily to ignore the other pieces, because there could be plenty of value there, but to make sure that you do play to your strengths and build your practice, your business based on what you enjoy doing, what you're already good at.
I love it. All right. So last question for you. If you could go back and give your 2012, 2013 self a piece of advice as you're looking at this decision to launch a company, I mean, what do you wish you had known then that you know now?
That's a good question.
Just so everybody knows, I always put people on the spot with this. One, just to see if they ever actually listen to the end of other episodes to know that this question's coming. But no, I'm kidding.
No, I did not know this question was coming. It's a really good question. I mean, I think that I've learned so much along the way about kind of how to connect with people and how to market in a way that they can identify with and relate to, and how to talk about things that other people care about. So I guess that would really be, now that I say that, that's really what I guess I've learned along the way that would have been helpful to know sooner, is that this isn't about you. It's not about your business. It's not about what you want to do or what you want to get out of it. Those things are all secondary to, it's about your clients. It's about your potential customers, and everything you do needs to be in service of them. And that is how you gain trust. That's how you grow a practice. That's how you get people to care about what you're doing and want to hear more from you. I actually we talked about Fizzle a lot, and I was listening to the Fizzle show the other day, and one of the guys, Chase Reeves, was saying whenever he's struggling with creating something, he just reminds himself to make a gift. Just make someone a gift and put it out in the world. And I think that's great advice. And I think the more that you can do that, the more you can make it about them, the more successful you're going to be.
That's great advice. Matt, thank you so much for taking the time to be on the show. This has been so much fun.
Hey, thanks, Alan. It was a lot of fun for me too. Appreciate it.
So that interview was a ton of fun. Matt is a really great guy, and his story's kind of crazy. I mean, he and his wife moved from Boston to Florida. They both started small businesses at the same time, all while having kids in tow. So it's such an inspirational story that I hope really connects with a lot of our listeners. So as always, you can check out the show notes at xyplannetwork.com/13. And just a reminder, if you want to ask our guests like Matt any questions, be sure to sign up for our free VIP community at xyplanningnetwork.com/VIP. Or text XYPN Radio, all one word, XYPN Radio to 33444 to get access to our free community. So this month's shows, all of them this month, are brought to you by New Planner Recruiting, the leading recruiting firm for financial planners nationwide. New Planner Recruiting offers many resources to coach and support Gen Y planners as they launch into the profession. Firms nationwide partner with New Planner Recruiting to source, screen, and integrate the perfect fit for their needs. Led by passionate and experienced financial planners, New Planner Recruiting has a refined, dedicated, and personalized plan to help both candidates and firms position themselves for success. I actually worked with New Planner Recruiting when I graduated college back in 2010 and was really impressed by the process they use to not only evaluate and place young planners, but to place them with the right firm for them. Be sure to check them out at newplannerrecruiting.com, and also be sure to listen to the episode that we did an interview with New Planner Recruiting co-founder and CEO Caleb Brown. You can check that out at xyplannetwork.com/9. Thanks so much for joining us today. We'll see you next time.
You're not alone, and you're not crazy. It's scary starting, building, and growing your own financial planning firm. And that's why we put together a free private community just for you, the Cutting Edge Financial Planner. Go to xyplanningnetwork.com/VIP or text XYPN Radio to 33344 and join a network of thousands ready to change the lives of Gen X and Gen Y clients.